welcome to another VO radio show. This one is not your bite-sized version. This is more of a sit-down with the family.
Oh, bit of a roast dinner.
Yes, that's right. Speaking of family, there's Robbo. He's already tucking in.
That's right.
He's gone through the entree already.
That's right. More prawn cocktail, waiter.
Yeah, jelly and ice cream for you, my son. Yes. Now, talking about jelly or maple syrup, if we're on the food groups, that's where we're heading, up to Canada.
Yeah.
Because I caught up with Matt Cowlrick, who's an ex-Brizzy talent, who has found himself living in Canada. He's been there quite a few years now.
Right.
And he's established himself as a pretty proficient voiceover guy, and he's doing well. And the interesting thing is most of the stuff he does is with an American accent.
Okay, wow, very talented then. The real trick with doing American accents for Americans is they, a bit like Aussies, they jump on the first sign that it's actually not an American doing that voice. You've got to be pretty close to spot on, don't you?
Oh, you do, indeed. But the one difference is that Americans don't actually watch very much Australian television, but because we live here, we have no choice. It's just, we're just tsunamied with the stuff, so...
Oh, yeah, no, I was saying sort of people doing Australian accents, Americans trying to do Australian accents, like Meryl Streep, great acting in that movie, but she never convinced me that she had an Australian accent, I'm sorry, but...
No.
Yeah.
No, there's... I don't know who's that. Well, the only one was, I can't even think of the actor's name, that English actor who was in the movie Lion. He was fantastic. You would never pick that he wasn't Aussie.
He was very good, yeah. And the other one that always made me laugh was the guy that did the mayor in the Australian episode of The Simpsons.
I don't remember that.
Wasn't even close. It was more like Scottish, I think, more than anything else.
Yeah.
So
well, they always cracked me up when Dick Van Dyke was playing, in Mary Poppins, the chimney sweep, trying to be a Cockney, sounded more like a really weird Australian.
Yeah, right.
Never got anywhere near it. It was,
yeah. Well, see, that's the nice thing about being Aussie. We don't have an accent.
No way, mate. No. No, I think we do.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we do. Exactly.
Yeah,
bloody oath, mate.
Yes. Anyway, talk about accents. Let's check out some of Matt's work with an American accent.
Sometimes you can't sit by and watch and wait. People need someone to step up and make a difference. Be the change agent the world needs. Because extreme difficulty is never a reason to not try. And hard is the exact reason they need you. They need us. Amgen.
Scrubbing bubbles? The girls' field hockey practice was a mud fest.
Let's bubble!
Mega Shower Foamer stays where you spray with Ultra Cling technology.
We work hard so you don't have to. Hippies. Drifters. Dreamers. Eager to start again. People with places to go. Or no destination at all. All setting out on the American Road. Catch the American Road exhibit this summer. Only at the Harley-Davidson Museum. Are you underwater on your mortgage? Keep Your Home California may be able to help. Help you to keep your home, keep your stability, and keep your joy. Our principal reduction program can help homeowners who have experienced an economic hardship or severe decline in their home's value. Visit keepyourhomecalifornia.org or call 888-954-KEEP.
Where did you train? Did you train as an actor?
No. Originally I did a music degree at the conservatorium in Brisbane. Then I kind of pivoted into voiceovers, but I did some training heading over to LA early on, like as I was wanting to get into voiceover. I took some trips over and trained with some of the coaches there. I did a couple of the classes in Brisbane. I'm sure you've seen a lot of the radio school courses pop up.
They're everywhere, yeah.
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 So I wouldn't say that was like my most formative training, but definitely having the chance to come over to LA a couple of times and also train with some coaches remotely there really helped.
It's interesting here because there isn't really that many coaches doing voiceover. No. I know that Abby Holmes has started one here in Melbourne. I'm not really sure of anybody else particularly. I know there's voiceover courses. There used to be one here in Melbourne as well at Brave Studios, and they're basically an acting school. But
it is an industry of itself.
It is. Yeah.
I think we're ready to open up coaches for voiceover coaches.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. That's right. Layer upon layer. The Sarah Lee voiceover coaching course. Layer upon layer.
Yeah.
That was an Aussie joke, by the way. Aussie joke. So how did you find it when you first moved over there? I gather you went straight to Canada. Is that correct?
Yeah, well,
You're going to say you met someone. You met someone, right?
that old pickle.
Yeah.
Well, I had lived in London for a year to, just briefly touch on the travel adventure. I lived in London for a year, and then I was doing a little bit of VO over there, and then I came back to Australia, stayed for probably about another year, and yes, then I was dating a Canadian gal in Brisbane. And I was sort of just ready for the next travel adventure. And this friend, she had to move back to Canada because her visa ran out, and it just happened to be Victoria on Vancouver Island. Uh-huh. And I thought, yeah, what the hell? I'm up for that. And was just going to go over for about 6 months or a year just to try things out and see how the relationship went. And then I ended up staying, regardless.
How did the relationship go, out of interest?
It didn't.
No,
as it sometimes goes. But I knew that a few months in that even if it didn't last, then I would stay because I kind of fell in love with the island and just the way of life here. And then eventually I met my wife, who's also Canadian, and now I'm pretty damn permanent. Really.
It looks like it, yeah.
Yeah.
What do you find different? I mean, Brisbane obviously is quite different to, say, Melbourne. And I kind of see Melbourne in that similar kind of thing to where you are, like Vancouver or, a small version of New York, I suppose. Do you see that? Do you feel kind of there's an attachment being an Aussie living in somewhere that could actually be Australia?
Yes, I think that I get to have that taste of Melbourne weather and... just having a big variation in the seasons, whereas in Brisbane it's kind of just wet and dry. I think that was pretty appealing at first, and I don't mind all the snow sports, so that's pretty handy to then just be able to drive 2.5 hours one day and you're on ski slopes. So that was a lot of fun to me, but. As far as the climate, we certainly here on the island don't get that typical Canada tundra, frozen winterland. It's pretty mild, really. I'd say sometimes it's for a lot of the year it's probably comparable to Melbourne with the temperatures that we get. So I think I got off pretty easy there.
Yeah, well, I've got a mate who's a newfie, and we have to keep him away from seals and anything with blubber because he'll probably eat it.
Yeah, he's got to stock up for the winter.
Exactly.
Yes, fill the fat stores.
Exactly. So when did you first get into voiceovers?
It was when I was in my music degree, so that would have been around 2006. And then when I finished that, I started doing voiceover in Brisbane. So I was doing some radio and some TV just around the usual hotspots there, and I was kind of doing some hustling on the web. My home studio then was not great, but it apparently cut it. So I started finding some work that way, and that would have been around 2007 that I started getting some gigs, and but it was really when I moved to Canada, weirdly, that things started to pick up for me. I think I just had a couple of business lights click on and figured out a few things that I didn't know before.
It's interesting being, for me, being down here and now travelling quite a bit backwards and forwards to the US. The first time I went across to New York to meet with Jim Kennelly, it kind of, the same thing, it was kind of a light bulb thing. You kind of go, these guys are salespeople that also can do voiceovers. That's what I've got to be. I've got to do that.
And when I moved over here, I was fortunate enough to be able to tap into one of the conferences that happens over here. I don't know if you've heard of FAFCon.
Yeah.
FAFCon for me was actually a really enlightening experience, and I learned there that I just needed to change up how I approached things as far as, business acumen and seeing myself more as a small business rather than like a solo performer.
Yeah.
That was for me, and I think it complemented the artsy side of my brain because I'd come from classical music, and it's all about the art, man.
Yeah.
It's all about the music, and so to have a little more hard and fast business training drilled into me, or business method, was really beneficial.
So what did you play in your musical when you got your musical degree?
I was a flute player.
Well, see, my wife plays oboe.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
We got to do a lot of wonderful wind music there at the con. All the wind players tend to stick together. Yeah, that's cool. Does she play now?
No, I think she'd probably blow her face off if she tried to blow the oboe now.
They're a lot of work.
They're good if you've got a young set of lungs, but
yeah.
I think you'd be wearing your sinuses on the outside if she probably tried it now.
Her and me both. Yeah,
yes, exactly.
Anytime I pick it up, I got to blow the cobwebs off. Yeah, It's a little sad, but I'll get back to it.
Yeah, one day.
Yeah.
So I remember talking to Nick Tate about this, and he was because when he was obviously very successful doing movie trailers, he did a session with a producer who came in from Atlanta or somewhere. And, of course, he rocked up and he was talking like an Aussie, and she's booked this guy called Nick Tate who sounds like this. And she's saying, it's the wrong Nick. That's not the Nick Tate I booked. He's saying, yeah, it is me. It's me. And so, of course, when he went in the booth, she just picked every single slight mistake with his accent until in the end he just said, look, I don't think I'm the right guy for you. You need to find someone else, and left. Have you ever had that happen to you where you've turned up for a session and they're in absolute shock that you are not an American or Canadian?
Sure, yeah, because as you know, is the dealio these days, we send in a lot of auditions, or, you do a read from your studio. And as I started doing more and more American accent work, which was kind of like a couple of years after I moved here, I was just submitting for these auditions, and then I would get the booking, but of course on the audition there wasn't a trace of anything Australian. And then I show up in the session, or connect on ISDN or Source Connect, and I'm like, oh, g'day, how's everyone going? They're like, who is this? You are not the person we booked. And it's interesting that you bring that up, because for the longest part, I didn't worry about it, and I think a lot of agents they didn't worry about it, and maybe there was a bit of fun in it of having someone be Australian and then switch over to the US read, and suddenly you're American, right? And that can kind of be fun. But as of late, I've actually transitioned into being not natural Matt from the start. I had one agent request that for a campaign that I started on, and he said, I think, don't, like what you said with Nick, when they know that you are from a different country, it just gives them more reasons to say no, or they're listening for other things in the read that they shouldn't be. They should be listening for the usual performance stuff, not accent. So he said, don't make it easier for them to say, okay, we have a problem with this. Let's just be American for the session.
Which is kind of weird. That must feel a bit awkward. So you're actually going, you're going in playing a character right from the get-go.
That's exactly it, because when I do my my North American read, it's there are multiple characters that I have that have different timbres and styles, but each of them is really more of an individual character than what I would do playing different timbres and styles with an Australian accent. So it really does feel like more of a character, and then I'm doing chit chat and banter as this character, and it is kind of off-putting, but finding my feet with it, and usually if I've been working with an account or a client for a while, I'll let them in on the secret. And like, oh, what, really? Oh, wow, we didn't even know.
Yeah, but it's okay if you're sort of working down the line, because you can be bright red in the face and pretend you're somebody else. But if you're actually in a studio, in a booth with the client sitting in front of you, and you're having to play this role, that's awkward. That would be awful.
I can't imagine that. Yeah.
No.
Yeah,
No.
I'm fortunate that most of the work that I do is from my home studio. with Vancouver, it's usually only the animation work that they really want you to go over and be in studio for. Even a lot of the commercial work that I do that is booked through sources in Vancouver, I can do from here.
Yeah.
Which is handy.
It's funny, though, because the other thing that happened with me, and I'm kind of guessing I can sort of hear a bit with you, I can hear like words like "and" have got American sort of lilt. When I first came to Australia, I was 16, and my accent was from North London, mate. I talk like that, you know what I mean?
Oh, really?
So, and then I decided I'd always wanted to be in radio. That was my thing. As a kid, I'd sit there, pretending I was a DJ and stuff. So I got to Australia and thought, okay, that's what I want to do. And it was like within 4 years, I'd had a couple of goes at it, and then it got to a point where it's like, I'm either going to do this or it's not going to happen. So I went to a radio station, as we mentioned, radio school, met a guy there and said, this is what I want to do with this accent. And for some peculiar reason, it was like Pygmalion for him, I think. He must have just thought, you know what, I need a challenge, and I reckon this is going to be one, because I've got to get that guy's accent gone. And he did. Within 3 months, I was talking like an Aussie, but I had a real Aussie accent, so when I got my first job in radio, it was like I was a rock jock. I played that character for years, much like you have to do. And it got to a point one day and I thought, you know what, this is ridiculous. Every day I come in here and I have to act this role out of this Australian guy on the radio. And I'm not going to do it anymore. So I just stopped. And the strangest thing is, I ended up with this accent. And I don't know where the hell this came from, but it certainly isn't the one I started with, and it wasn't the one I was playing. It's something that just happened. So my question is, and it's a very long, convoluted question, how has your accent changed and how do you manage it if you want to be an Aussie for a read, being your natural self?
I've always, for a long time, I've described myself as having quite the mongrel accent. It's a real hodgepodge, having lived in London. And then even when I was back in Australia, I was still doing characters and playing around with accents, and I was chatting with a lot of people in North America. So I think it's always had that not quite Aussie feel to it, or there are different sounds throughout Australia, but I lost that real ridgy-dig one that I had, and I was growing up in the country, and my family are all from Rockhampton, so that's the flavour that came there. But I find that a lot of what I'm hired for on the Aussie side of things is actually a little more global. Like they're okay with having that influence of other accents. That's usually what I skew towards. And then when I do get hired to be an Australian, the typical Australian bloke, that then I think becomes more of a character, or I'm tuning things a little to go towards that. Yeah,
you get pigeonholed, but then someone will actually break that and say, why don't you do this? Can you do this for us?
That's it, yeah. And I think it's really interesting how I think we find ourselves with that in voiceover more than a lot of the other performance professions, like, completely going from your mold. And, you were talking before about not actually being in the booth, or like being remote. And not having that physicality to influence someone's perception of you, and I think that counts for a lot in voiceover. You can kind of be more, whereas with stage or film acting, the way that you look can tend to limit what range you can play.
And also, when you turn up to a studio, if you turn up looking like a certain person, that's it, you're pigeonholed. But you could have the most beautiful voice in the world,
Yeah, that's right. And I think that's what I like about the current MP3 audition culture, because in contacting agents and production houses, might go in with some specificity, like, oh, this is my niche. Once they start sending out auditions, you can stretch yourself and play a really different sound. And that was, I think, one of the things that started me playing different ranges and really the American accent. I was on board with my agent in Vancouver, And all I had done with him was recording. I was playing a character on a cartoon show called Pirate Express, and my character was Bert, who's just like this Australian version of Pinky from Pinky and the Brain. And he was kind of like, oh, hey guys, let's go. Oh, I'm get blown up, and he'd go flying into the air, and he was, really, really silly, goofy character. But it was all I was to that agent. Really, was an Australian guy. And then I ended up submitting an MP3 for a commercial, which was company scrubbing bubbles in the US. And so the voice that I did for that was,
Scrubbing bubbles. We have a new mission. The party last night at Down Maldonado's kitchen has turned into a hot mess. We work hard, so you don't have to.
And, I got to do that as an MP3. And I walked into the studio and they're like, well, we expected you to look incredibly different. We didn't expect you to look like that at all. We thought you'd be like 40 or like 50. And so, I think if I'd gone in and read with that voice, would it have had the same sort of result?
How did your agent react to hearing a different accent?
Oh, yeah, he was pretty confused at first. But now it's really a lot of the work that we do together is me being an American or being a Canadian. He was freaked out by it at first.
How did you get the accent? Did you go and do a class or something, or did you have a coach for it?
Yeah, I worked with a coach based out of LA, and I only did really one session with her, and I think so many Australians, as you know, both in Hollywood and voiceover, there are a lot of Aussies who can do a really authentic and bang-on American accent.
Yeah.
And, like many of them, I grew up watching American sitcoms and, playing American video games. So, we have an authentic example of the accent. So mine was already pretty good. It was maybe like 90, 95% there. And that's what the coach that I worked with in LA said. She said, yeah, it's really very close. There was just some small tweaking to do. And that was incredibly valuable, both in fixing up the inconsistencies that I did have at that time. And then also just having the confidence to go in and perform with that accent. Because if you don't feel confident, then the reads aren't going to come through as authentic, and there's no point, going out for spots that are in the American accent unless it's like if it's a character, you have a little more leeway as far as being you can be goofy and it can be a bit of a caricature, but when you're doing standard commercial reads, you've got to feel 100% in it, otherwise that's going to show in the performance.
What I find, if I'm putting on an accent, my voice changes. So I could actually drop a register if I'm playing a certain character in it with an accent. When I do, it does, if I do an American thing, which I rarely do, I find the register drops. And yet if I'm doing like a Cockney sort of bloke, it sort of goes up a bit, you know what I mean?
Oh, so, that's really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm so glad you said that because, I had realized that I was doing that. And when I was talking before about having the characters for my US accent, yeah, they're definitely just lower.
Yeah.
And I was like, what am I? Can I just not do the accent at my regular register? Is it just not possible? But it does seem to go lower.
Yeah, it does. And I noticed on the spot that you put on LinkedIn, which prompted me to give you a call, which is a great read, fantastic read.
Oh,
but
thank you.
Like when I hear you talking now, it's not in the same register as your normal voice. You're way down.
Yeah, but actually that register is a lot of what I book in now. Like, with that US accent, I think I feel more comfortable in it, and that tends to be a lot of what I go out for.
Yeah. Now, talking home studios, we're both sitting in in fact, we shouldn't call them home studios because I'm trying to think of a new word for them, but I think Dan Hurst calls them personal studio. I think that's what he calls it. Anyway, something like that.
I like that, yeah.
Yeah. But I've seen a couple of pictures of yours, and I do vaguely remember seeing some logs
Yes. We live in a log home. Really cannot get more Canadian at this point.
Yes.
So we live in a lovely log home, and when I first moved here, I was working out of basically like a vocal booth, similar to the Whisper Rooms, but it was one that I built myself from plans. And then when we bought this place, took advantage of all the joys of being able to knock down walls and no one care, built a really wonderful studio. I'm really happy with how it came together.
So what sort of gear have you got in there? Do you keep it minimal, or are you a bit of a, like me, a bit of a collector of stuff?
I've managed to stave off that dangerous habit. Although I respect you for it, I can see how it goes.
Yes.
I do keep it pretty simple because I'm not very skilled as far as the engineering. I do what I need to be able to do. Back in the day, I got pretty fast at editing when I was doing that myself, and but I never really got into using anything like Pro Tools or Logic. It was all just like the basic audio editors, like Twisted Wave.
Yep.
But as far as the gear, it's simple, but I love the gear that I currently have. I use the Sennheiser 416, which I'm talking to you on now.
Yep.
And I have the Neumann TLM 103.
Yep.
And I have both of those in a lovely little interface. I'm sure you've probably heard of it, called the Gold Digger, the Radial Gold Digger.
No, I don't.
It's a mic switch. So I can have 4 microphones plugged into it, and I can change between the two. So, now I'm on the 416, and now I'm on the Neumann. And it's really easy to just switch between them.
Oh,
and
nice.
then the handy thing for doing patch sessions is there's the 2 other channels that I don't use. I can use them as mutes, so I can close the line and do a massive burp or something like that.
Yes, always handy.
Yeah. And then that runs into a Focusrite preamp, and that is the one gear splurge that I'm looking at doing in the future, like embracing the gear geek in me.
Yes.
And getting a new preamp. But this one's been really good for a number of years.
Yep.
And then that goes into an Apogee Quartet, and I'm on Mac, and I think that's about the story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, there's some lovely stuff out there. You can go crazy. I have got a bit mad, but in the end,
all the power to you. Yeah.
Yes, it was a splurge. But it's funny because I use different things for different clients, and like the thing I'm on now, I use this for a client, a TV network in Singapore, because as it turns out, when I was watching online, I thought, hang on a minute, that sounds pretty ordinary. It was just one spot, and I think I'd actually recorded that remotely, But I did contact them and said, look, do you do any processing? When I send you stuff up, what do you do? It's like, we just basically lay it over pictures, and then we stick it through like a plug-in of some sort. And it's like, man, that is not good. So luckily I had the stuff here. So then I spoke to Robbo, who's the guy who normally does the podcast with me, and we just went through a few things, and so I set up, all I've done really is set up a bit of compression, really mild compression. I record it, when it's -6, and then I normalize to -3 dB and then send it. And basically that just sits perfectly with their pictures now, so we don't have to worry too much. But then other clients don't want me to compress anything, so then I would use another setup. So there's a couple of different ones I use here as well.
So when you were sending the work through to Singapore, were you using a channel strip for the processing?
I've got channel strips. So I've got a Neve 1073, which is very luxurious, and I use what we would call a valve mic, or I think in America tube mic, and I run one channel with that, and that's I don't touch that at all, and that goes out to people I know are going to produce the spot. Then I have this microphone going through the other channel of the 1073, and then it goes through a compressor, 1176 compressor, just mild compression.
Lovely.
And then I have an LA610 as well, so I use that with this microphone from time to time.
I don't think you're a good person to talk to, Andrew.
And I'll do you a good deal, my son. Don't you worry about that.
Well, I was looking at the when I was upgrading the studio when we were building this one. I was looking at the Universal Audio 6176.
Yeah, nice.
But I'll scope out the 610. That's
well, 6176 is really nice too because that's the 610 preamp with the 1176 compressor, I think.
Yeah, and the reason it was put forward to me because I was chatting with a friend of mine in the US who, he runs a production house and knows all his gear, and he said, you could go for either there's like the Manly Vox box, and then there's the Avalon, and both of them. Like each does one thing very well. One, will do punchy, more promo reads. It'll excel there, and then the other is great for those warm, natural commercial reads. And because I kind of alternate in both of those worlds, as you do as well. He said the 6176 could be really beneficial because you can switch between the two. So.
Yeah, and the good thing about it also is that it's really easy to use. Like, as you said, you're not an audio engineer, neither am I. And I just, with LA610, I just actually went online and saw a guy showing me how to set it up. And then I kind of go, okay, well, if you pull back the gain, then you're not going to work the valve too hard, and then you put up the level, so that means this gets a nice clean sound. But if I want to get it dirty, I can reverse that and then and it's also with the LA610, it's also got a bypass on the compressor, which is kind of handy because the older ones didn't. But the Mark II does have a bypass, so you can actually just click it off and just run it through. It still runs through the transformers, but you don't have compression.
Oh, that's fun.
So it's very user-friendly for people like us.
Yeah, absolutely. I like that.
All right, well, we had a bit of a geek fest. It's probably time to go and earn some money so we can pay for it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, more expensive habits.
Oh, yes. Well, some of the other expensive habits have long gone, so why not?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I could go for gear, or I could, take up just a full-blown cocaine addiction, but...
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. On that note, time to snort out of here.
Yeah, let's do that. Good. Well, thanks very much.
Pleasure. It was great. Matt Cowlrick, expat Aussie, living in Vancouver and doing very well.
Nice. Very good work. Very good work.
Great work.
Yeah.
And I like the fact he's got a house made of logs, the log cabin.
No, does he?
Yes, you couldn't get more Canadian
than that. No, is he wearing a Mounties hat?
Only on certain occasions, but we didn't actually touch on that because that was a bit too personal.
Right, okay.
As for the moose, well...
Yes. Canada, where the Aussies live and the mooses are scared. Or is it mooses or moose? I think it's moose, isn't it? Where the moose are scared.
I would say so.
Yeah.
I don't know.
They're scared anyway.
Yeah, exactly. I would be.
It's good to see Aussies doing well overseas, though. Really good.
Yeah. You trade your Hawaiian shirt for a bit of flannel.
Yes.
He's done well.
He has done well. Absolutely. Yes. Not the most Aussie of climates to move to, but hey, whatever rocks your boat, I suppose.
Exactly. Well, it could be Melbourne, as we discussed.
True.
It could very well be Melbourne.
Yeah. Although it is spring. Got to be happy with that.
Yeah, not down here, it's not.
No.
No, it's horrible.
All right, I'll reserve my plane fight for another month or two then.
Yeah, stay right where you are. Sunny Sydney, the Emerald City.
Absolutely. Well, there you go. Another big week. That was a great interview, mate. Well done.
Oh, thank you very much. We'll be back next week with something. God knows what.
We'll think of something.
I'm sure we will.
The VO Radio Show is produced in the studios of Voodoo Sound. To polish your next audio production, check us out at voodoo-sound.com. Find professional voices simply all in one place. Realtimecasting.com, including me.